Good morning, cuties and comrades. Today is another beautiful day in history, and we've got critical work to do. Yesterday, I had some internet problems in my opening. Hopefully, that is not happening now. Hopefully. There's no way to know, though, is there? It's a real fun game we live in, this tech world. Is my stuff working or not? Who knows? Okay, but today I'm happy to see you here, whether it's a little laggy or not, because it is a consequential Wednesday, which means we are halfway through the week. We've worked through what it means to be intentional, what it means to focus on those things that are essential. And today I'll pull it down for you, just in case it isn't all laggy and you could actually read it. What do we say, Internet? What do you say? You into that? I'm into it. Okay, so as I said, we've talked about these two, and we're talking about consequences today and how often the things that matter most are the consequences that come from it. And in fact, let me rephrase what I was going to say. I was going to say that it's more important than intentionality, but that's what's interesting about the critical tradition. It isn't about whether consequences actually are more important than intentionality, because I don't know, on Mondays I've got some pretty good arguments for intentionality, so then I come on Wednesday and say this one matters more. That's the thing, is these are in dialectic with one another, they're in dialogue, and they affect one another. And sometimes, especially on the day where it's being featured, it's useful for me to pretend as if whatever we're talking about is the most important. It's often useful to view, like last week, we pulled a Jean Paul Sartre card, and he definitely believed that consequence mattered above all else. I don't always agree with Jean Paul Sartre, but it is useful to take on his perspective and be like, okay, let's take that on. Let's think as if consequences are. Let's consider it that way. Let's consider as if consequences are actually the ultimate thing, the end all be all. Let's consider the world through that lens. So that's kind of what we're doing here. Consequences are really important, but I have to fight my own urges not to rank them, because I think that ends up getting in our way. So I am not interested in putting one before the other, but consequences super matter. Our material conditions really, really, really matter. They really, really matter. And I think Jean-Paul Sartre is right that, and coming from the Marxist tradition, that history is determined by consequences, by material actions, and not by intention. So in that sense, it certainly is the most important. So if you want to make a good impact on history, do the right thing with your material conditions. Make sure you are considering the consequences to the utmost degree. If you think history is important, then you should also hold consequences important. Not above other things, but it should be a high priority. Okay, so enough about that. Okay, we get it. But I'm serious about that ranking thing. I'm tired of that nonsense. I'm here to abolish ranking. It's called sectarianism. I have theories about it, but I won't go into it. Okay, so consequences. We are going to be pulling consequential cards from my Of the People, by the People, for the People. And I got to tell you, ladies, I have no lady cards in here, which is on me. I need to do something about that. That's a lot of dudes, a lot of men. So let me be clear, even though I have work to do, obviously, but the reason, how did it end up this way? How did this whole stack end up filled with men? Well, there are multiple conditions. This Western tradition that we're part of has been heavily white and male. Now, is that because, as it's been framed or implied, they were the only ones smart enough, right? Untrue. I don't believe that. I reject the concept of the future is female. I think the future is fluid. I think the past is female, far more so than we've ever been taught. I don't need the future to be female. The future is going to be loosey goosey and it's going to be awesome. The past is female, y'all. Why did all these men get to sit around and write and think all day? Because they're not smarter than us. They just had the opportunity to stretch their intellectual muscles. What was possibly going on in this society that allowed these men such a privilege? Was it women's work, upholding the community, feeding them, making them meals, taking care of their children, keeping up their household? Why, yes. Why, yes, it was. So even when I pull a white male card, they were impacted by the women, and I do need women voices. Like, for real, I critique myself. I looked through this and it needs to be fixed. It needs to be remedied, which I will work on. But let me also say that with each male voice, if they had anything of wisdom to say, I see a woman back there, okay? That's all I'm saying. If they came to any intellectual conclusion, I'm going to give a woman some credit for that, okay? The past is female, y'all. The past, there are women all over these cards. Yes, they are invisible, but not due to the reality, the real conditions, due to how we have cataloged history and wisdom throughout time. So women are here just as much as men. And again, in spirit, I know they're here, but also it isn't just about intention, it's also about consequences. So what am I going to do about it? I'm going to add more women to this stack. So please, I need to put links in all these videos in the description for you to share consequential Google Forms. I will be doing that immediately after this video. I will make for each day, I will make a collection form for consequences. So if you know, please help me out, help out this mission to bring more women voices to this day in particular. But all my days need more ladies, I have been, because these men, like, look at this, Plato, Paulo Freire, he's the leader of my tradition. Khalil Gibran. So I have a range of men, but really a lot of what I'm looking at and a lot of the dialogue we're familiar with in this historical moment was by men, right? A lot of the ideas and books and concepts were by men. And so a lot of times to have a introductory conversation in these moments with ideas that we're familiar with, we are going to be pulling back from that history that you learned that was curated around white men. So I need to be better and rise above, but also this is our historical moment and it's the language that we speak is one of mostly white men in this tradition. But again, not because they just had the chance. All they had was the opportunity. Not like people laboring in the fields all day or washing their clothes all day, which was like, y'all, washing was a huge job that like took so much physical labor, these huge cauldrons and stuff. Women's work was hard. And I'm not just talking about women, I'm also talking about people of color and all sorts of subjugated people throughout time, including queer people. Give me some more queer people who've talked about consequences, because they have, and they've had smart things to say. So let's flesh out, let's make this Colors of Critical a little more colorful, shall we? That's what I'm all about. So help me out in that mission with the link that's definitely there now below. Okay. So let's toss these guys in. They are guys this time. But I heard a really good argument that guys is gender neutral. And I'm into that because I'm a guy. I'm a guy. You're a guy. We're all guys. Hey, we're guys. But in this case, this is real. A lot of dudes. Okay. Paulo. Paulo. Okay. So let me get it. Oh, thumb in the right place, huh? That's a good spot for a finger. All right. I think you should be able to read that. I, however, cannot. And I will read my notes while you read this. It is Paulo Freire. Is that the Pedagogy they press? Oh, yes! Heck yeah. Okay, so my theme on the back is talking about the responsibility of discretion. Ooh. So while you're reading that, and I'm looking at my notes, okay, some good notes. Responsibility of discretion. So before I read the quote itself, what I'm talking about, and we'll see, does my previous notes align with what the theme of this quote actually is? Responsibility of discretion, that is talking about how in the decision-making process, which is a big part of consequential, you can't have consequences till you've made a decision, you've made a choice. So the responsibility of being a decision maker who can wield power in the world that transforms it means that every choice that leaves my mind, I need to have discretion, which means it's like having a bouncer at your mind. You have to be like, ah. This is what the theory of resistance, I think, is really all about. Before you let a thought into your mind, you've got a bouncer up front, like, hey, ho, whoa. I'm checking out this thought before I let it all the way in. Okay, you're good to go. And same with the choices. You've got another bouncer on the way out. Hey, whoa. Are you ready? We're checking them. I don't really like the bouncer. Bouncer implies violence, which I don't care for. Let's come up with a different metaphor that's like a bouncer, but like not with the threat of violence. I'm going to think on that. But you get the metaphor. That's what discretion is. We have a responsibility to have bouncers, but like uplifting ones, like drag queen bouncers. Yeah. Like, yes, like drag. Let's go. Queens. Yes. At my door. That's what I want. Yes. Okay. That's the kind of bouncer that I want. All right. That's the kind of energy that we're talking about. All right. They have high standards. Oh, you bet your bottom dollar they do. And you're not coming in unless you are worthy. And you're not leaving unless you are looking good for the real world. You see, that kind of energy. All right. So that's what I'm talking about. Some drag energy up in here. Do you think Paulo would agree? Let me read. Well, I'm falling over. Let me read what he wrote, and we'll see about that. Okay. Any situation in which some men prevent others from engaging in the process of inquiry, in the process of inquiry is one of violence. The means used are not important. To alienate men from their own decision making is to change them into objects. Boom! To alienate men and women from their own decision making is to change them into objects and others, all people. See, Paulo, Bell Hooks talked about this because I'll go on to this quote later, but Bell Hooks, who was all about love, we talked about her in my afternoon video yesterday. And when we talked about reverence and how creating a culture of reverence is very Bell Hooksian, or at least that's what I'm aiming for. She developed a lot. Obviously, she brought a lot of her Black girl magic to the table, but she was really inspired by Paulo Freire, who was undeniably sexist. In his original language, he did update the Pedagogy of the Press. He recognized where his failings were and he adjusted. He realized that the consequences his choices had made, and he recognized that it wasn't the type of consequences that he wanted to be part of. And so he adjusted and changed the language in this. And honestly, I should have gotten the updated language myself, but this is the original wording. And yeah, it was sexist. And Bell Hooks said, look, all these other white feminist scholars rejected him immediately, and they didn't see the good here. I don't know how they missed it, because I can see it just like Belle sees it. She said, I was so thirsty that the water he gave me quenched me. I didn't care that there was some dirt in it. And like, yeah, there's some dirt in it. okay, undeniably, but she could still take something good. She still had plenty to revere about it. Sure, there were things to problematize. That water wasn't clean enough, but damn, she was thirsty, okay? So she didn't care that he wasn't a perfect human being. And surprise, nobody's a perfect human being. So that's a hard bar to live up to. And like, yeah, he's sexist. We'll call him out on it and hope he adjusts. And he did, because he was an intelligent being who learned from his mistakes. And he realized he was being dehumanizing in not including women and other people too. Okay. So I'm going to read it one more time, since my bouncer metaphor isn't perfect for this one. Not at all. Maybe I should save my notes until after I read the quote, because my notes can go off a million places. Not that it's wrong, but okay, I'll read it one more time. Any situation in which men prevent others from engaging in the process of inquiry is one of violence. The means are not important. Okay, I'm going to stop with just that for right now. Engaging in the process of inquiry, not asking questions, not being able to ask things and to just accept things as truth. Okay, here we go. I'm bringing the bouncer back. I'm bringing him back. Okay, so when we are engaging in the process of inquiry is one of violence. Okay, so to be able to ask questions means that you do have that bouncer up front. Okay? In her amazing heels and her big glamour dress, your bouncer is kicking ass. Okay? And taking names. So she's up there killing it with an awesome queen name. I'm not going to do it. There's no way I could come up with a good one. I don't watch the show, even though it seems great. Not for me. I just don't like reality, is really the extent of it. Okay, so by engaging, asking questions, the process of learning should be one of asking questions instead of just, if you're not able to ask questions, that means your bouncer's got to sit down. You're supposed to just accept things as they are. As they are, and no questions asked. You don't get to inquire into why we're doing this. This is the way it is. This is the one truth. Your bouncer, it doesn't matter what your bouncer has to say. Go ahead and take a seat, because this is the information that you're getting, period. And he's saying that's violence. That's violence. I must have my discretionary bouncer up front being able to reject things actively and put my foot down and speak to those rejections and say, no, I won't. No, I reject this. And if you force ideas like that and truths onto people, that's violence. That's indoctrination, saying you can't resist this truth. This is the only way. That is indoctrination. So let me say again that critical scholars are trying to do the exact opposite. Now, people will try and tell you that it is indoctrination. We're not saying that our way is the only way, but you got to have a bouncer. It's either bouncer or no bouncer. There's no like half measure bouncer. You're either not letting people ask questions. There just is no middle ground here. And so on this front, yes, we do think we're right, but it isn't about because we have the highest truth. No, because this is correct. We've seen this take place. Indoctrination. I mean, watch any cult documentary ever. They were brainwashed is such a strange term, but they lost their humanness. Their lives were no longer their own. When you don't have control over whether you get to have your bouncer, whether you get to have your own discretion, you get to decide for yourself. If you lose that, you hand over your life's power to someone else. And that is literally dehumanizing yourself. You're giving the power of self-sovereignty over to someone else through the act of decision making. You might not even realize it, but you are losing your life. Okay. So we take that seriously here in the critical tradition. So we're not interested in that's not what education's about. And in fact, that's harmful to education. That's not the type of education we're interested in. And if you are interested in that, that's indoctrination. That is dehumanizing. We always stand against dehumanizing, and we're unafraid to say that standing against dehumanization is always right. Is always right. So that is the truth, is to the best of our ability. If there is any truth, it is to not cause harm. That should be, and even that, right? We talked about the different beliefs of sometimes if you have to yank a kid's arm to pull him out of the street, like it's unfortunate that you have to cause harm, but you did it to save a life, right? Hopefully, our work should be not even allowing those moments of harm to take place. We should try and work so that no one has to yank the arm. We should take care of the conditions so we don't get to that point. So all harm is a problem that needs to be solved. That, if you want to call that the ultimate truth of the critical theory, fine. Fine. That's fine. Because we're fine holding that truth up, because who's that going to hurt? That's not going to hurt anyone unless you're hurting someone. So we're on the side of the people not being harmed. I think that's the ultimate truth, right? And now, we're not saying there's only one way to do it. We're saying this should be of the utmost priority. This should be of highest importance. And let's figure out the truth together. How do we make that happen together? So, yeah, if you want to say not causing people harm is indoctrination, I mean, sure, but it is a doctrine. Don't harm people. But isn't it the doctrine that's found in all cultures, all religions throughout time? It sure is. It sure is the thing that I talk about it all the time. Socrates, we're evoking a human truth from within and translating it to the best of our ability. This is the best of our ability, and I think it's pretty good. So, yeah, this is the opposite of indoctrination. This is liberation, where we're saying, we need to practice our skills against indoctrination. And they say, oh, self-defense is indoctrination in itself. It's like, no. Okay, I'll move on to the next part. So, to alienate men from their own decision-making is to change them into objects. So that's kind of what I was talking about. I got there before he did. Well, he got there decades and decades before me, and I had already just read it, so it was fresh in my head. Oh, Sarah, you didn't come up with that, did you? No. And probably neither did he. And probably he was shaped by a lot of women who helped him realize that. Yeah? Yeah. We all help each other learn and clarify those truths. Okay, so changing them into objects. See, now that is interesting. So I do like that too, because you're saying that bouncer, our favorite bouncer, picture her now. She's awesome. Love her so much. She's got long lashes. Are these on good today? They're okay. So that bouncer is part of a healthy mental ecosystem, is to have your drag bouncer up front, okay? And that's part of life, okay? This is a thriving mental ecosystem, has that kind of system in place. Somebody checking at the door on the way in, entrance, and the way out. And if you stifle that and say, no, instead, I'm going to program you to follow certain rules, the rules set by someone else, it won't be a living, dynamic ecosystem in your mind. It will be, parts of it will start to decay and die and become mechanized and programmed with specific rules and not living. Like, look, I think if we talked, I bet that work of being a bouncer is actually super interesting. And I should really talk to someone who's had that work, because there isn't going to be, man, if they know the truth that there isn't one truth to follow, like, there are exceptions to be made, right? The person in front of you trying to enter into this club might check all of the problematic boxes, but like, look how fun they are. Come on. I imagine there are so many scenarios where it's like, let him in, let him in. Or are we a little full? God, get in there. You deserve to party. You know what I mean? Like, there are exceptions to every rule. And that's part of what it means to be a human life, is to have room for those exceptions, right? Like how I said, do no harm, except if you're yanking a kid's arm out of the street. So like, do no harm would actually let him get run over, right? If I actively sat there and decided that my consequence would be, oh, I can't do any harm, so let me watch him die. Do you see how the strategy and the logic don't always align? That's part of the human dilemma, is I have these values, do no harm, but if I live entirely by those values and I put that at the ultimate truth, I'm going to find myself in situations where that fails me, because that's how it works. We have to adapt our truths for whatever situation we're in, because strategy must adapt in order to live up to the logic. Okay? So it's the same with decision making. We can't say there's one rule for everything. We have to say your bouncer ultimately decides. It's up to your bouncer ultimately what goes into your mind and what leaves your mind and becomes a real world consequence. Otherwise, you're not living a full human life. You're letting yourself be indoctrinated and not making necessary choices that bring about more life. It turns you into an object, as Paulo Freire says. Okay, so I think I went off on this long enough. I love this, and good night. Can we talk about, I won't talk about it too much, but real quick, let me say, this is what we do to kids in schools. Alienate them from decision making is to change them into objects. They're programmed. I hope they do exactly what they're supposed to do every day. Get their morning work, silently go to their desk, do this, do this. It's programmed. They don't have any choice in it. It isn't a human activity. We need to infuse more opportunities for human agents to make their own minds up instead of having everything mapped out for them. That's what robots do. We're not interested in that. We're interested in being prepared and being dynamic and have thinking capacities that are ready to shift and move and do the right thing, because man, it's complex out there. There are so many consequences that come from our actions. We need to not have some mental tracks that we just go down like, okay, take this track and that's it. No, we've got to be alive and breathing and on our toes to be human. Okay. So thanks for joining me on this Consequential Wednesday. I will see you tomorrow to talk about independence, creativity, divergence, critique. Oh man, independence is a really cool day. So thank you, Paulo. And more ladies soon. Add them in the form below. Can't wait to see what wisdom you bring to the table. I want it in my container ASAP. So share it with me. All right. You be consequential out there and have a colorfully critical day. Bye.